The Last Word with Ali Velshi in for Lawrence starts right now. Hey, Ali.
Hi, friend. Always a nice week when I get to see you in person as we were on primary night. An exciting night.
You were so good at the big board. I don't even know how you had all those things in your head. You guided us through the night of many, many races and lots of complications. Thank you for doing that.
It's like a big iPad, right? It's a tool. As long as you know where to go for stuff, you can get the information. I really enjoyed your conversation with Tim Walz. He's a guy who's pretty careful with his words. He knows, he's a good talker. And when he said that Kristi Noem should get used to spending time in Minnesota, I actually wondered if he misspoke and meant getting used to spending time in South Dakota. And the point he was making was that she should get used to spending time in Minnesota because Minnesota is going to be looking into a lot of things that ICE and DHS and CBP have been doing, and she should get comfortable with it. I thought that was a surprising and strong statement he made.
And get some good lawyers. I think that's what he was saying to Kristi Noem, too.
Yeah, these folks are not Donald Trump. They don't have the protections that are built into Donald Trump.
Exactly.
We learned a lot. Thanks, my friend. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Great show.
All right. Today, we were just talking about Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem became the first cabinet secretary to be fired by Donald Trump in his second term. Donald Trump announced the news about 20 minutes before Kristi Noem was set to deliver the keynote address at a law enforcement conference in Nashville, during which she did not address her firing that had just been announced 20 minutes before. In announcing Noem's firing on social media, Donald Trump wrote, Noem will be moving to be special envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere we are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland. Donald Trump didn't say why Kristi Noem was fired. This is how Fox reported it.
When I saw this news, I called an administration source to ask what was going on, and they told me that they were going to send me some spicy reaction. And what I am about to read is both spicy and not subtle. The text reads as follows. It was time. Replacing Kristi was based on the culmination of her many unfortunate leadership mishaps, including the fallout in Minnesota, the $200 million ad campaign, the allegations of infidelity, the mismanagement of her staff, and her constant feuding with the heads of other agencies, including CBP and ICE.
Now, the straw that broke the camel's back may just have been Kristi Noem's less than stellar hearings this week before the Senate and House Judiciary Committees. On Tuesday, Noem testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
I just asked if you had anything you wanted to say to the parents or to the family of Renee Good after you called them domestic terrorists.
I can't even imagine what they have gone through in the loss of their son and the loss of their family members.
But how about specifically calling them domestic terrorists without any evidence of that?
Sir, ma'am, I did not call him a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an incident of.
I think the parents saw it for what it was.
Do you want to take an opportunity to apologize to their families that you characterized them on the basis of the information you had at the time that they were engaged in domestic terrorism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I certainly offer my condolences to these families and for their loss. And it was a tragic situation that we saw in Minneapolis, and we continue to work to make sure that those situations are handled appropriately.
Question. I understand you're offering condolences. You said something that accused them of being domestic terrorists. A 37-year-old mother of three, a 37-year-old Veteran Administration nurse. One question. Do you want to apologize for that characterization that they were domestic terrorists?
I will continue every day to get up and to work hard to give everybody.
You talk about killing a dog that was 14 months old. I train dogs, all right? And you are a farmer. You should know better. You should know that if you're going out to a hunting lodge and you're putting pheasants out and you're putting dogs out, you don't take a puppy out there. A 14-month-old dog is basically a teenager in dog years. You decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time in training, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices. It's in your book. We could play it if we had time. At that same lunch hour, you killed a goat. And you killed the goat because you said it was behaving badly. You are a farmer. You don't castrate a goat. They behave badly. You should have probably done that before. But my point is, those are bad decisions made in the heat of the moment, not unlike what happened up in Minneapolis. I expect we're an exceptional nation. And one of the reasons we're exceptional is we expect exceptional leadership. And you've demonstrated anything but that.
Yesterday, Noem again refused to apologize to the families of Renee Good and Alex Preddy when challenged to do so by the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin.
You stated the conclusion 2 hours after they were killed that they were domestic terrorists. I wanted to give you an opportunity to correct the record, not just for their family, but for everybody in America who believes in the truth and fairness and honesty.
In every situation, as facts come out, we relay.
You know, your acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, came before Congress. He said he had no knowledge whatsoever that Alex Preddy and Renee Good were domestic terrorists. None. This is your guy. He said that. He admitted that that was wrong. Why won't you admit it?
I will tell you the investigation is still ongoing, and we'll.
So do you regret speaking before the investigation?
I would say that in those situations,
you regret that?
Chaotic scene on the ground, we relay information to the American people that they're asking for. And as things change, situations change.
People were asking you whether they were domestic terrorists? And you decided that they were before the investigation?
As we learn more, we.
You don't want to say anything to their families?
Mm-hmm. I did. I said condolences.
For what?
How
about an apology for what you said about their loved ones?
My heart is with them, and we will continue to stand with them as they get a complete investigation into these situations.
All right.
So now you're getting a picture of why she might be out of her job. Then there's how she handled questions about the Department of Homeland Security's $220 million ad campaign.
The president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president know you were going to do this?
Yes.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, Senator, I think would be helpful to know is how effective that communications has been. That
well, they were
overwhelmingly
effective in your name recognition. I mean, I personally just... I mean, to me, it puts the president in a terribly awkward spot.
After that testimony, quote, President Donald Trump told Reuters on Thursday that he did not sign off on a $220 million border security advertising campaign featuring Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who faced bipartisan criticism over the commercials during U.S. congressional hearings this week. Quote, I never knew anything about it, the president told Reuters in a phone interview. Donald Trump announced today that Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin will replace Noem effective March 31st. You may remember Senator Markwayne Mullin as the senator who challenged the Teamsters president Sean O'Brien to a fight during a 2023 hearing. Yeah, that's an interesting moment in senatorial history. Today, in an article titled Trump Fires Kristi Noem Finally, the Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, quote, while Mr. Trump praised Ms. Noem's spectacular results, there's no mistaking this move as anything other than a fed-up president cutting loose an aide who made herself into a serious liability, end quote. All right, leading off our discussion tonight is the Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Commerce Committee. She's also a candidate for the governor of Minnesota. Senator Klobuchar, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks, Ali. It's great to be on.
Her answer to your question about calling Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist, when she said she didn't call him a domestic terrorist, she said it appeared to be an incident of domestic terrorism. You're a lawyer and a legislator. That is some hair splitting if I've ever seen it.
It was just insulting. It was insulting to Alex Preddy's family. I had explained that when I talked to his parents the day after he was killed, that they had told me directly that that hurt them more than anything that had happened since they had learned that their son was dead. And so I felt that I had to bring that up to her and ask her if she wanted to say anything to the family. But I have to be honest, Ali, I never thought she would pretty much meander around and act like she hadn't said it by splitting hairs in a ridiculous way. And also she wouldn't really admit that it was wrong that they rammed the door through of a U.S. citizen, the Hmong elder, and dragged him out in his underwear. She wouldn't admit it was wrong to stop off-duty cops just because of the color of their skin. And on one of the police officers, they put guns to her face. And this happened in one of our suburbs. I think a lot of our colleagues had not heard some of these stories, and I hope that it helped to get them even madder on the Republican side when they asked their questions.
She said something else. I remember I was working both days when Renee Good was killed and when Alex Preddy was killed. I was on the air when Alex Preddy was killed, and my executive producer said there's been another shooting involving a federal agent in Minnesota. And we're awfully careful about this when we hear this information, because we know video will come in. We know lots of information. We know heat of the moment. And so we don't characterize things. And in both instances, Kristi Noem was very, very fast to characterize it. DHS said that Alex Preddy was brandishing a weapon. And so the next morning I got on TV and showed you frame by frame that was not true.
I remember, Allie. I remember, and it took a while for, as you said, you try to be careful. Former prosecutor, I try to be careful. And it wasn't until I saw that video blown up of the gun in the holster and the border control agents in Alex Preddy's case taking that gun out of the holster that you realized what they had actually done. But they lied at the beginning, and she then just embraced that and threw that out there as the head of Homeland Security. And I still am amazed by the questions that Senator Tillis asked. Of course, that was probably one of the most interesting part of all the questions, but with the goat and the dog. But I just believe that it shows that sometimes people say, why do you have these hearings? What difference do they make? She was still in her job before those hearings started. They had not removed her from her job. Those hearings made a difference. Of course, what made the most difference was the people of Minnesota standing up, 50,000 of them marching peacefully. That made the most difference. But she was still in her job, even after all that. And the fact that we were able to take her on and pinpoint her on the fact that she wouldn't answer these questions. She wouldn't explain what had really happened in all these cases in Minnesota. And she didn't even seem to know the number of agents that were truly on the ground. There were all kinds of things that were incorrect in her testimony.
Tim Walz said to Jen Psaki an hour ago that she should get used to spending some time in Minnesota because she's going to need to spend some time there explaining her actions. You may be the next governor of Minnesota. Can Minnesota hold Kristi Noem and others in the Department of Homeland Security liable for some of the things that have happened in that state?
Well, I know Attorney General Ellison is looking at every possibility. We're also looking at reimbursements, right, for all the police overtime and everything that was spent on this. When our police officers were unable to answer regular calls of law enforcement and were forced to, when you talk to Chief O'Hara in Minneapolis, it's an unbelievable amount of money that was spent. And so I know that we'll be pursuing that. And of course, the other thing is a transparent investigation of the deaths of Renee Good and of Alex Preddy. And the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is a bunch of seasoned professionals that worked on the assassination of Melissa Hortman and her husband with the FBI, that worked on the shooting of the little kids in the Annunciation Church with federal officials, and now they've been shut off. So, of course, there's a parallel investigation going on.
I have to ask you about Congressman Raskin asking her, again, the same question you asked about labeling these two people domestic terrorists. And she said, I was just trying to relay the information that the public was asking for. What could that mean? The public's asking
by the way,
2 hours after a shooting? What is that?
She did this a day after the disastrous Senate hearing, right? She doesn't even try to clarify the next day what this is. And what the public wants, and I just, from my former job as a prosecutor in our biggest county, Hennepin County, I know that what you have to do in those moments, because you can have really scary moments, you have to get out there and be very clear. This is what's happened. We're looking at the evidence. The scene has been, cleared. We are making sure people are safe. And we're going to refer this to a thorough investigation. And then after you get some more facts, then you say, I'm very sorry. This is to the family. You make calls, you do all these things. And just all of this normal civility and public trust has just gone down the tube with this woman. And I think that's what you've seen with the announcement of her resignation, something, I never voted for her. I have called for a resignation for a long time, but finally the White House got to the point of realizing, I guess it didn't take 2 dead American citizens out of the state of Minnesota. It didn't take all these people that were unlawfully detained or unlawfully stopped or thrown in a car in their underwear. But finally, these hearings did it.
Well, I hope accountability is contagious. I appreciate the work that everybody put into some result that looks like accountability for the moment.
Well,
Senator,
there's a lot more that this is just the beginning. It's nowhere near the end, as you know.
Yes. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, now a candidate for Minnesota governor. Thanks always for your time.
Thanks, Alan.
All right, coming up today, it was the House Republicans' turn to show that they're too cowardly to stand up to Donald Trump as he uses American troops to pursue regime change in Iran. That's next. Today, the Trump administration signaled that it is looking to intensify attacks on Iran while claiming that it does not equate to an expansion of Trump's war there. Tonight, Israel launched a series of new attacks on the outskirts of Beirut, Lebanon, in what the New York Times is reporting, quote, to be the most intense attack since a ceasefire in late 2024 halted fighting between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. Now, before that attack, Lebanon's health ministry reported that 123 people had been killed and 683 were wounded in the recent Israeli attacks. Today, Azerbaijan accused Iran of drone attacks that struck civilian infrastructure, including an airport and a school, which Tehran has denied. The State Department closed the U.S. embassy in Kuwait as Americans in the Middle East remain stranded trying to evacuate, with airspace closed and air travel severely restricted. In the once again evolving explanation for what the goal is in Iran, Donald Trump made the case for regime change, saying that he should be involved in choosing Iran's next leader. He should be involved. Ayatollah Khamenei's second eldest son is reportedly a top contender to take over and would likely continue his father's hardline policies, according to the New York Times. Donald Trump told Axios, quote, "They're wasting their time. Khamenei's son is a lightweight. I have to be involved in the appointment, like with Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela," end quote. He added that he refuses to accept a new Iranian leader who would continue Khamenei's policies, which he said would force the U.S. back to war in 5 years. Those are his terms. Quote, "Khamenei's son is unacceptable to me. We want someone that will bring harmony and peace to Iran," Trump said. Or at least someone who will do what Donald Trump wants him to do. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said this today.
We have clear objectives with maximum authorities on the battlefield. The dumb, politically correct wars of the past were the opposite of what we're doing here. Our munitions are full up, and our will is ironclad, which means our timeline is ours and ours alone to control. Iran is hoping that we cannot sustain this, which is a really bad miscalculation for the IRGC in Iran. You see, there's no shortage of American will here.
But that's not actually what Americans want, according to polling on Trump's war that has already killed 6 U.S. service members. 56% of Americans do not approve of the U.S. military strikes in Iran. I just want you to keep in mind, think about Iraq and think about Afghanistan. These things tend to be fairly popular at the start, and then the longer they draw on, the less popular they get. This is wildly unpopular right in the beginning, and it is hard to imagine those numbers getting better for a president who campaigned on the promise of no more endless wars. The World Health Organization said today that almost 1,000 deaths have been reported in Iran, including about 170 who died in the bombing of a girls' elementary school. The U.S. says it's investigating that attack. Iran's foreign minister said today his country is not looking to negotiate a ceasefire with the United States and Israel right now, telling NBC News that if the U.S. decided to invade with ground troops, quote, "we are confident that we can confront them, and that would be a big disaster for them," end quote. In an interview with Time magazine, when asked whether Americans should be worried about retaliatory attacks at home, Trump acknowledges the possibility. Quote, "I guess," he says, "but I think they're worried about that all the time. We think about it all the time. We plan for it. But yeah, you know, we expect some things. Like I said, some people will die. When you go to war, some people will die," end quote. Some people will die. Today, Pete Hegseth said there's no shortage of weapons, despite reporting from the Wall Street Journal that the Pentagon is scrambling to replenish its dwindling stockpiles of missile defense interceptors. And today, Republicans in the House blocked a bipartisan war powers resolution introduced by the Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna, who will join us in a moment, and the Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, that would have restricted Donald Trump's ability to continue his war in Iran without congressional approval. It's not that high a bar. If you think you're justified in having your war, just ask Congress. That's what the law says you have to do. However, a similar measure failed in the Senate yesterday. Joining us now is the Democratic Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. He's a member of the House Intelligence and Armed Services Committee and is a former U.S. Army Ranger. Congressman Crow, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
I don't know where to start. The cavalier attitude toward the loss of life, Pete Hegseth had it and Donald Trump had it. It's kind of wild to me. I understand that in wars people die, but then those wars should be considered and strategic and should be explained to the American people and justified to the American people.
Yeah, let's start there. Let's start with the cavalier attitude. I mean, because isn't that what this is all about? The fact that they don't understand the suffering. They don't understand that the Americans don't want this. They're sick and tired of financing this, of bearing the burden of endless wars, of fighting and dying in these wars. I learned a long time ago when Donald Trump and others love to talk tough and bang the war drums. It is working class folks that always have to bear the burden. That continues to this day, right? Why we took a vote today really didn't have anything, in my opinion, to do with us just wanting to be involved, us wanting to be engaged, notification requirements. What the vote today was about returning accountability back to this broken process, putting Americans back in the driver's seat in the most important decision the government can make. And that is the decision to send our sons and daughters to war and to spend our money in conflict. And Republicans walked away from that.
Congressman, I spent a lot of time studying Iran. I was there when the deal was negotiated. I kind of know a lot about the place. Pete Hegseth said we have clear objectives. I cannot determine what the clear objectives are in this war.
Yeah, because he's lying. That's why, right? The justifications for the war change by the day. The objectives change by the day. He said we're doing the opposite of dumb things, which should be smart things, right? So there you have. That's the end of the debate. We're dominating. We're meeting all objectives. Donald Trump has rated it a 15 out of a 10. So we should just all move on and not worry about it. The problem is this is costing us $2 billion a day. 6 service members already gave their lives. This is likely to get worse, much worse in the days and weeks ahead. They are doubling down on this failure, which is exactly why Congress needs to step up and Republicans need to grow a spine and actually stand up for their constituents.
Congressman, I know you've done 2 tours in Iraq and in Afghanistan. I wouldn't mind if you could help me explain what Pete Hegseth said when he said dumb politically correct wars of the past are over. Were you involved in dumb politically correct wars?
Well, I have no idea what Pete Hegseth talks about half the time. I don't spend my time inside of Pete Hegseth's head because it's not a great place for me or anybody else to be. But listen, he deployed in these wars and he took something very different out of that experience than I did. What I took out of that experience was that it's working class kids like me and the people that I grew up with that have to go and do endless patrols in Baghdad and be subjected to roadside bombs and sniper attack while oil executives and CEOs get rich off of these wars, much like is happening today, as a matter of fact. And the fact that we spent $5 to $8 trillion, 7,000 American lives, 20 years of conflict, trying to nation build and regime change, and look what happened. Right? Have we learned nothing from that experience? Apparently, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth haven't learned anything from that experience. Americans know better, though. Here's the deal. The reason why this is unpopular is because we know better. Americans don't want this, right? They literally can't afford health care. I have constituents calling me daily. They're losing their health care. They're losing their homes. People are dying of medical issues that they can't pay for. Our infrastructure is crumbling. And Donald Trump is spending $2 billion a day and counting on another endless conflict in the Middle East.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. We spent $5 to $8 trillion on those other wars, and now we cut benefits to people because we got to balance the budget. I mean, it's kind of amazing that this is the stuff that drives up our debts and deficits. I'm going to be talking to your colleague, Brendan Boyle, about that in a minute. Congressman, thank you. Thanks for your service to the country, and thanks for being here tonight. Jason Crow of Colorado. All right, joining us now is the Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight and Armed Services Committee, and along with Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, pushed the measure to stop Donald Trump's war, which didn't pass, but came awful close. It perplexes me, Congressman. We're not debating whether or not Donald Trump should go to, whether America should go to war in Iran. That's a valid discussion that people can have, and you in Congress should be having. You're asking for Donald Trump to be accountable to Congress as the Constitution requires. That if you want to go to war, you need to make the case and convince Congress that you go to war. You don't get to do this on your own.
Yes, and all Democrats but four stood together to affirm Article 1, that Donald Trump can't be getting us into an endless war, costing over $1 billion a day, costing American lives, without asking the American people for their support, without asking Congress for authorization. But I was so offended by the clip you played with Peter Hegseth, the Secretary of War, saying that these are politically correct ways that we fought in the past. You know what it's led to, his thinking? It's led to arguably a strike that killed 170 Iranian girls. The military is saying that we may have done that. And that's because Pete Hegseth thinks that protecting civilian lives overseas is politically correct. You know what? I believe that an Iranian life has as much dignity as an American life. It's a human being. And to have that kind of callousness is not only contrary to every faith tradition, it's a contrary to the founding principles of this country. Shame on Pete Hegseth for talking about Iranian girls as if they're politically correct pawns.
Yeah, I would just like to have not illegal wars. I mean, it's not clear that this is a legal war to start with. Forget politically correct. Why are we doing this? Why are we at war with Iran? What is the explanation given to American people about why this is in the national interest?
Well, there is no explanation. They first said we want to change the regimes. Now they're saying they don't even think they can achieve a regime change. They have no sense of there being an imminent threat to the United States. In fact, Donald Trump is acknowledging that the threat to people here in the United States is because he launched this war. That is chilling. If you're living at home in a suburban community, Donald Trump is saying you may die because Iran may retaliate here in the United States. He's literally made people's lives less safe. And he's saying, oh, well, that's what happens when you go to war. And for what? This is the most egregious foreign policy blunder since the Iraq War. And the American people are waking up to that. And the Republicans now own it because almost the entire Democratic Party said we're against these endless wars. We want to be spending on schools and hospitals and jobs here.
Congressman, thanks again for being with us tonight. Congressman Ro Khanna of California. All right, coming up, 6 days of Trump's Iran war, and Pete Hegseth is showing yet again that he is a terrible choice to lead the Pentagon. That's the assessment of Tom Nichols, who'll join us to explain why next. Two, Captain Cody Cork of Winter Haven, Florida. His family described him as the life of the party. Noah Tietjens of Bellevue, Nebraska, a father and a husband. Declan Cody, just 20 years old, from West Des Moines, Iowa, who was posthumously promoted to sergeant. Major Jeffrey R. O'Brien of Indianola, Iowa, who has received multiple awards during his service. Pentagon has not yet formally confirmed the identity of the sixth soldier killed and is awaiting positive identification from military medical examiners. Yesterday, Pete Hegseth said this about the media reporting on the loss of American soldiers in Donald Trump's war.
We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality.
Try for once to report the reality. The reality of war is that soldiers die. The absolute least that their sacrifice deserves, as inconvenient as it may be to Pete Hegseth and all the fun that he has talking about the absurdly named Operation Epic Fury, is for the media to report out the names of fallen soldiers. In a new piece for The Atlantic titled Pete Hegseth Treats Fallen American Soldiers as a PR Problem, staff writer Tom Nichols writes, for years, defense secretaries and top generals have carried the anguish of decisions that have led to troop deaths. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates has said that he wept as he read the stories of the fallen. Some generals have carried photos of those lost under their command, even into their retirement. Hegseth, instead, noted the losses almost in passing and used them as a vehicle for his ongoing beefs with the press. Like his boss, he does not talk to the American people so much as put on performances for them. Pete Hegseth, if he does not resign, should at least get out of the way and let better men than him talk to the nation and to the press. Joining us now is Tom Nichols, Professor Emeritus at the U.S. Naval War College and staff writer at The Atlantic. I've never served in any military in my life. Tom, that is disgusting, what Pete Hegseth said. It was in passing. He basically said, we've got our video game war that goes on. We've got control over all sorts of things. People die. People just die.
You don't have to have served in the military to find that whole episode ghoulish and terrible. Hegseth, like his boss, has to make everything about him and his interests and his political fortunes. And the idea that somehow 6 American soldiers should die and Pete Hegseth is, irritated that somehow makes the front page during a war instead of all the cool stuff we're doing. It shows you just what a complete adolescent the Secretary of Defense is and why he should never have been confirmed to that position in the first place.
Well, there's so much wrong with this war. It's not worth sort of figuring out whether or not you like the Iranian regime. That's actually a fairly easy conclusion to come to. Most people don't like them, and they're really bad. They're murderous. There's a lot of things that are bad about them. There's also a lot of headroom for what we can continue to do with it. We had a deal with them. We can make another deal with them. We can negotiate. We can put sanctions on. We're not out of headroom to have decided to do this without the approval of Congress and without making a case to the American people.
If Donald Trump had wanted to go to the American people to say, look, as George W. Bush did, and whether you agreed with
liked it or not, or agreed with him or not, he believed that was a hill that he had to climb.
And to the United Nations as well, even though he really had no use for the United Nations, but he went and stood in front of it twice to make this case and said, in effect, even though that the rationale for that war was WMDs and Saddam's refusal to cooperate with international inspectors, which was a real problem, really what the Bush administration was saying is this regime in this kind of world we live in is an intolerable threat to everybody. They are just Saddam Hussein and his sons are simply too dangerous to be allowed to stay in power. If Donald Trump wanted to go to the Congress and American people and say the Iranian regime is so hideous, so ghastly, and he couldn't make that case. As you say, no one is shedding any tears for the Ayatollah here or anywhere else. And if he wanted to make that case, then let him make that case. But the problem is, every time there's a question about what this war is about, well, it's about nuclear weapons. Well, it's about ballistic missile launchers. Well, it's about IEDs and how terrible they are. And every time the president blurts out the truth, which is this is a war for regime change, all of the other Republicans going to kind of clean up on aisle 6 and say, well, like Speaker Johnson, well, it's not a war. No, I'm pretty sure that when you fly to an enemy capital, bomb it, kill their leaders, and then call on their people to rise up, you've pretty much passed the line for war. But they don't want to. They want to have it both ways because, of course, there's such an anti-war coalition in MAGA world. They want to say that they're not at war, but they also want to say, but look at them. They want to thump the chest and so look at the muscular, cool stuff we're doing, and they can't have it both ways.
So in the beginning of the Afghan war, there was support for it because it looked like it was in retaliation for something that had been done to innocent Americans. Iraq was more controversial then, and in hindsight is yet more controversial. This one is not one that has popular support at all, partially because of what you're saying. No one's bothered to explain to us exactly why we're involved in a war right after we just got involved in a thing in Venezuela, which no one bothered to explain to us either. Wars don't get more popular over time.
Right. And I mean, it's really remarkable that there has been no rally around the flag effect here, that every president has gotten a bump from military action except Donald Trump. And I suspect The reason for that is most of the people in this country have made up their mind about Donald Trump. The people that don't like him, don't like him. The people that are going to support him will support him through anything. But there's a large group of people in the middle who are saying, like him or hate him, I don't want to go to war, with a country overseas. I don't want to be in yet another Middle East war. And I think on that, he just assumed that if he just, Trump has this thing where he kind of wishes things into being. Well, if I just do it, people will support it, Iran will surrender, and things will work out somehow. But that's not how a war of this size goes.
No, with a big country that is an industrialized country that has allies and weaponry at their disposal. Tom, thanks. Always good to see you. Tom Nichols. All right, coming up today, gas prices went up and your 401k went down, all because of Trump's war on Iran. And not because people think mission accomplished is around the corner. I'll talk about that next. There are a few ways to assess the cost of any war. The most important way we just focused on is in the last block is the actual loss of lives, military lives, civilian lives, and not just the ones on our side, on the other side too. And then there's the actual cost in dollars. Today, MS Now confirmed an estimate first reported by The Atlantic, which says the war with Iran is costing the U.S. an estimated $1 billion a day, according to 2 congressional sources with knowledge of the matter. Based on that estimate, the U.S. has spent at least $5 billion on the war since it began on February 28th. Think about that. $5 billion. Okay, now put that aside for a second because I'm going to give you some bigger numbers. During the decades-long conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. spent a record amount of money. The Harvard Kennedy School has put the total somewhere between $4 to $6 trillion. Trillion. Adding the largest portion of that bill is yet to be paid. So sit with that for a minute. We're still paying for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They actually make up a very big part of our debt right now. And I mean we, because it's our tax dollars. So how long will this new war last? No one knows, but at $1 billion a day, what will it do to Donald Trump's already delicate economy? Last week, the White House was pointing to cheaper gas and a record-breaking stock market to crow about the economy. Now, CNBC reports stock resumed their decline Thursday after a one-day respite as concerns over the Iran war flared up again, with U.S. crude topping $80 per barrel. The moves in oil drove major market swings throughout the session. The 30-stock Dow fell 1,000 points at almost the very moment that oil reached the $80 per barrel threshold. Oil was $60 a barrel not that long ago. Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman doesn't seem too optimistic about the long-term impact of the war. Quote, "There are many stresses on our economy, and this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, a straw that becomes heavier the longer the war goes on." My next guest, Congressman Brennan Boyle, is the top Democrat on the House Budget Committee. He wrote a letter today to the Congressional Budget Office asking them for an analysis on how much Donald Trump's war with Iran will cost American taxpayers. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Brennan Boyle of Pennsylvania. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. There are a lot of reasons why Donald Trump should have sought approval from Congress about this war. But this is one of the big ones. Wars cost us a lot of money. And then we go through this nonsense we've been through for the last year with DOGE, cutting regular Americans off from their benefits and from their jobs because we're still paying for Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, good to be with you. And, if you think back just over a year and a half ago or so, Donald Trump was in my state more than any other state during that campaign. He kept saying that his number one priority would be lowering costs and that he would accomplish this, mind you, and I quote, on day one. Mm-hmm. Well, here we are about 14 months in. Already we're paying more in terms of what we pay for the cost of consumer goods, thanks to the Trump tariff tax, which is what it is. It's a de facto national sales tax. We're also now paying more for health care because of the record cuts that Republicans pushed through this summer in their so-called big, beautiful bill, which will mean 15 million Americans will lose their health care. And now, on top of all of that, you have this, spending at least $1 billion a day on a war that the vast majority of the American people do not want.
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, 59% of Americans don't want, depending on what poll you look to, it's about that. It's around 60%. About 35% of people are supportive of Donald Trump, but 35% of people will support Donald Trump no matter what he does. But there's a direct line between what we spend on war and what we can't spend here in America.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, how in the world can we afford to pay to provide health care for the 15 million Americans that are about to become uninsured as a result of this administration and Republicans in Congress, if it turns out we're instead sending that money to fight this military adventure that we're seeing in Iran, which still, by the way, I've yet to hear one rationale for what we're doing and also what exactly the end game looks like. Right. That still has not been communicated to me as a member of Congress. We've certainly heard many different theories on what's behind it from different administration officials, but the story is shifting day by day.
Well, remember that we had a strike carrier group off the coast of Venezuela. Supposedly this was about drugs. And of course, the minute it happened, it was about oil. So at least they finally told the truth. But that strike carrier group was there, so it couldn't be in Iran. And now we've got strike carrier groups in Iran that are not in East Asia, so that, God forbid, something happened in Taiwan. I mean, the Chinese must be laughing at this, saying, you just sent all your stuff to Iran for a war you didn't need to be involved in, and we're endlessly threatening we're going to go into Taiwan?
You know, you raise a concern that is an increasing one for me, as well as the other members of parliament that I serve with in the NATO parliament. We are, the group of us, increasingly concerned that China might take advantage of a very distracted United States in order to act on Taiwan. And I have to say, the further we go into this Iranian adventure, the more difficult it would be to turn around and act, if God forbid we needed to, in a Pacific theater.
Congressman, good to see you as always. Thank you for joining us. Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania.